All right, cheers. Thanks everybody for joining. Let me share my screen so there's some context for if a recording is being viewed. That should be this one. So first up question, is there anything where I'm dropping the ball or I can help out from a UX point of view? This is mostly geared at Etienne in this case. You were saying you were focusing really on the deploy keys issue. Is there something I can help out with in that sense that I do not know of?
Just the confirmation of a question I asked maybe a couple of days ago. Instead of using the fingerprint, I'd like to have confirmation about using the title of the deploy key along with the beginning of the fingerprint. I posted something, comment about that on the issue.
Yeah, I should have answered that in the issue or merge request. But yeah, I confirm that's a good idea.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I think we discussed it as well in the weekly meeting, right?
Yeah. But just since I only work off of the issue proposal, yeah, I just wanted to have a confirmation there.
Yeah, I've copied your proposal towards the issue description as well.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for that. Then I have the opposing thing before we go in a little bit more processy questions. There is this follow-up from AdVueX. This is actually more for Andrew. I saw this issue as like, I do not know what is going on. What is this? So I thought it might speed up us a little bit if I just ask, but then I'll shoot him a message in Slack or something, and we can have a quick one-on-one, or I'll just read the description a little better. So without that, let's skip on to the next things. Let me see. Yeah, so I have a big question on how engineering decides to work on. So let me give some context. I know there is the engineering UX or the engineering handbook page. Just to give a little context, and let me put this into my browser. I have created this page specifically from like looking at those processes from a UX point of view, and to have like I navigate throughout GitLab handbook and issues and the project through these links, and it's nice for me to have. But I also detail things like how we're working with jobs to be done, how we're doing product planning. Like I know there's all kind of details that I am gathering for myself, and the handbook page for the engineering team is one of the things I really need to dive into still. But it's like a huge document, even if it's just for progressive delivery, with a lot of information in there. And discussing with Orid earlier today, I spoke out that I'm like, this is based not on facts, it's just a feeling that I'm not sure how engineering always decides on what to work on. Is the planning issue the funnel for what engineering decides to work on, or is there additional methods that engineers and engineering managers decide on what their team will work on for any given milestone? So anyone who wants to take that away, please do.
Just to answer this question, as far as I'm concerned, I just look at always the priority and the P1s and S1s of each issues, right? So that the priority labels and severity labels, right? So that's I don't know, that's the main rule of thumbs in the team, as far as I know. But Chase would confirm that. But I know at the moment, like I started a P2 as part of 13.2. And so I'm trying to move that for to work on that in priority, even though it's a P2, because I already started work. So to me, that takes precedence over like the new P1. I'm gonna start on P1s and P1 S1s soon, but I try to move as far as I can with the P2s that I already have started.
Yeah, anything that's in progress that's from the previous milestone, I think we should like wrap whatever we're doing up. We shouldn't drop, like we shouldn't leave like work sort of half hanging. I think sort of finish what you're doing before you pick up something new. Even if it's a lower priority from the previous milestone, it's still like still makes sense to me to continue on to do that and then to go through and find a P1 to pull from the current milestone in my head.
That makes sense. So, for example, if I look at a planning issue, right? Let's look at a planning issue just to get some context here. Because if I look here and without like looking at the spillover here, if I look at the 13.3 planning issue in this case, I see here release P1s. There's some P2s. And then there's all these other issues. There are bug fixes, security fixes, UX depths, UI polish. Like there's a lot of issues that do not fall directly within this. Like how is that being taken care of? Like how is it decided that you're going to work on that they're appropriately weighted, that they're taking into account, like those kind of things?
They all should have some kind of prioritization label on them, even if they're not expressly called out in those other like high priority deliverable type buckets, like a release P1. They may have like release P3 on them, and that's not necessarily listed there, but like, you know, things like bug fixes, you know, polish, all those kinds of things might end up in a P3, depending on how, depending on the bug triage labels, right? Like P2, S2.
Those are the like the release priority and severity labels, or is it like the general S&P labels?
The general S&P labels are from bug triage, and that has its own separate set of like SLOs and things that are calculated around that. The other ones, the prefixed release ones, are how OREAT and product are trying to prioritize issues just sort of generally, right? And it's a nice flag and a good indicator of where time and attention should be spent.
So you work mostly off from the release specific priority labels?
Yeah, unless there's something, I think there are the exceptions to the rule. There might be things like security fixes if they're not already, if they didn't come with that label, if they came in late, or they didn't come from a product perspective, but they came in from like the engineering track perspective. Mm-hmm. They may not have those labels when they've been added to the board, because they were added by me or Dan or somebody else who's like, here's this thing we should probably fix.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I do want to know, I do want to let know that for progressive delivery and actually also CI, but as I'm managing progressive delivery from product design perspective, UX depth and UI polish have become part of triaging efforts. So in that triage issue report issues that are generated every week, mm-hmm. We do list the ones that have not yet received like a milestone, either backlog or something more decisive. And my take on that is that I try to, as soon as I can find the time for them every so many days, give every UX depth and UI polish issue a label, at least severity label. Priority label I'll leave up to ORIT to say like, hey, this is, you know, absolute priority regardless of severity, yes or no. Mm-hmm. I know. I was just wondering about that. So thanks for that. Let me see. Do I have another? I had another question, and that is, yeah. So my follow-up question to that would be, as a milestone starts and like the scheduling issue has been finished, how often does it happen that engineering takes on or is bringing in additional issues into that milestone that weren't like scheduled for so much? Are those mostly scoped off issues that are brought in, or is that not happening at all? What I'm trying to get out of this is that I'm trying to see how things go into the milestone, and you know, I need to get as clear an overview of what happens within a milestone as I can. So that's why I'm interested in it.
I think we've had that happen a few times since I've been here. when things do show up into the milestone that weren't necessarily planned for it, it's because some prioritization thing has changed, or we, like, say for feature flags, for instance, like we went down a road and we realized that the timing is not right. And so we had to quickly go through and sort of push and pull some issues in and out of the milestone to accommodate, like to have available work while we were waiting for other things to happen. It's also happened where we've seen like high priority security bugs like show up and be like, or regressions. Like we had that a couple milestones ago where there was an regression from something we did the milestone before, and it was like severe enough that we wanted to fix it immediately. That wasn't planned for. Things like that. It happens.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But for
So
the most part, we try to walk off of we've been trying to go through the planning issue and trying to stick to that if we can.
Taking care mostly going through the planning issue. So with that in mind, because this makes total sense, by the way, what I want to avoid to the most, like, is it like my assumption here is that most of those issues that then come in, apart from, you know, like a high severity last moments, like regression or bug, those things have already been weighted and kind of like we know what we want from them, and are not like, oh, we decide to bring in this new feature instead that we don't like, it hasn't been groomed or anything like that. That's true, right?
I think so.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that brings me to my next question. This is the thing that I was actually having a discussion this morning with Vitika from CI about, like, I want to improve developer handoff as much as I can. I think the story that Etienne told today on this meeting just a little earlier about, hey, this issue being there, and it, you know, it expands a little bit beyond what was initially thought. Like there's a lot of things that are involved either from UX or engineering point of view, and it kind of sounds to me like there needs to be more planning breakdown, or planning breakdown needs to be happen a little earlier, or it needs to be more involved or given more attention. And my first question would be, and so like the goal I have here is I would ideally like to move towards a flow where we flow from workflow design, from my perspective speaking here, to workflow planning breakdown. So when I'm done with an issue, I've already spoken with engineering most of the time, you know, ask them like, hey, is this feasible at all? What do you think of this? You know, getting some feedback, but that this is not yet like the discussion you have where you're going to bring it down to the exact MVC scope or iteration towards MVC scope that we're going to implement for first milestone, follow-up milestone, et cetera. Those kind of things, those discussions need their own separate space if we can give it to them. So my first question would be, how do we currently in general, and I think Nicole might be, might have the clearest overview of this as front-end engineering manager. How do issues move from the product designer towards engineers, and that they feel confident in what they need to build? Like, how is that process currently being governed by labels or anything else?
So I don't know that I'm the person that would have the most clarity on this. I would say Orit probably has the most influence on the planning breakdown label. Generally, that's where product is flushing out ideas with engineering, and it wouldn't actually get into like the scheduling or ready for development phase until it's gone through that process. That being said, I don't know how heavily Orit uses the planning breakdown label on her plan board or during her plan phase.
So if I get you correctly, like planning breakdown is mostly a product management label, or it uses it to get together with engineering to ideate, or how should I phrase it?
Yes, ideate and break down, to your point, to the smallest point, if possible.
Okay, yeah. So my thoughts in that would be like breakdown, perfect. Ideation, I would not like to see that within the planning breakdown session, because the concept should already be clear, right? Like that's where, and I think like if you ask me, workflow design is not specifically product design related. It can also be for engineers to figure out what they want to do for a specific technical implementation of an issue or something like that. But do we see some opportunity here to potentially standardize on like separating the ideation from the planning breakdown? Because I think that is one of the things that we're currently a little bit blurry in progressive delivery, as far as I'm concerned, at least.
So for clarification, I would say not ideation, rather implementation opportunities or challenges is probably for clarity. I don't want to say that ideation is happening in planning breakdown, because I think generally Orit tries to have some of that fleshed out. Etienne might be able to speak to that though, as to whether or not that happens frequently.
Yeah,
like
yeah, I'm gonna jump here. As far as I know, as far as I can see, when I'm exposed to all these issues pre-development phase, ideation does not happen at the planning breakdown. Ideation should not happen at the planning breakdown. To me, planning breakdown, first, it's not a label I'm exposed to as a developer, but as far as I understand, maybe it's not used at all. But to me, planning breakdown is when we weigh the issue. So that means that the proposal has been, worked sufficiently.
Sorry, what?
Sorry?
Can you repeat what you said? I didn't hear it.
The proposal, the issue proposal has been worked, people worked on the proposal like sufficiently so that developers can add a weight to the issue. To me, that's the planning breakdown. When we do the weighting exercise, maybe weighting is something that you're doing, Dimitri, as well, from a design point of view, when the issue has the label workflow design. But as far as development goes, planning breakdown is when we do the weighting issue. We are going to define how many MRs the issue is going to be needing in order to be completed. There is no ideation. It's just taking the proposal and say, it is possible to do this realistically in 3, 4, 5 or more MRs.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the change I would like to make is to become, from my side, more involved in planning breakdown and see how I can, I think that is the biggest opportunity for better cooperation between engineering and UX. Like it's just currently, it's sometimes hard to know what's going on from engineering point of view. On the other hand, I think I might be able to help out. Like you can speak and advocate from an engineering point of view what breakdown means, and I might be able to help and advocate alongside with Orit to speak what that means from a user's perspective, while I would say Orit mostly talks about it from the business perspective and say like, hey, if we're going to develop this feature in a certain way and we want to have, 4 merge requests to fully develop this feature, can we do it within Milestone? Do we need to break it up? What does this mean? When are we going to make it user facing? How are we going to approach this in the release management or the release post? Like those things are kind of the thing where, at least from my side, I was a little unclear. So this is cleared up a lot. But yeah, I would, I've discussed with Orit to kind of boil it down to one thing because we're nearing the end of the meeting, but discuss with Orit like, hey, can I bring issues from workflow design towards workflow planning breakdown? And she said, yes, for sure. Like you can just assign a label and we can go from there. what I would like to know if that helps, like, does that move an issue forward at all? Or is that just an empty label assignment? And there needs to, like, something additional needs to happen in order to make sure that we collaborate, engineering and UX, that issue is ready for implementation fully as much as it can be.
Yeah. So when it comes to collaboration, I would like to see, and it's just my personal opinion here, but I think it would be nice to see that collaboration happening, at design or planning breakdown. Maybe UX should have a clear sense of like what the proposal is and have all the mockups delivered onto the issue ahead of planning breakdown. Just my fear, and maybe that's unfounded, but my fear is to have too many actors within one label. Which means that if we have a label as a workflow planning breakdown, and if we have UX involved, and then product manager involved, and then engineering is involved within that same phase of that issue, I feel like the issue is gonna stall onto that label before moving on to ready for development. So maybe UX should be ready and have delivered all the mockups when the issue is within, when the issue has the label workflow design, and then passing it over to engineering when when the issue switches to workflow planning breakdown, and then at this point engineering can do the weight estimation. If there is more like feedback that needs to happen and to be received by UX, then maybe the issue can like switch back to workflow design. I'm not sure, right? But like that back and forth between planning breakdown and design is actually could reflect the conversation that engineering and UX has.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally hear what you say. Too many actors there. I think it's important to see that GitLab is currently doing it maybe slightly different than some other companies, where I would say planning breakdown, the DRI in normal or in most other businesses would be the product owner. In this case, I would say, if I'm correct, and please feel free to disagree with me, product ownership, that kind of role is kind of divided between product management and a little bit product design. And it isn't really clearly laid out which responsibilities are expected of which role. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm trying to help out both engineering as well as Orid here as product manager to make sure that that our roadmap is as fluent as possible. And this is the thing, it's a little bit of a blind spot currently for me. So I see it as one of the opportunities where I think, hey, I see issues, spilling over, or maybe that spillover is very logical, but it is not phrased or made that way because the planning breakdown happens too late. And we see, hey, there's additional issues that need to be created. This is unfeasible to be delivered in one milestone while we thought it was. Like those kind of things. I feel like if we have a clearer aligned picture on, hey, this is when the feature flag will be introduced. These are the minimal things we expect to be developed in however many merge requests that we want them to be developed. But this is the point where we activate the feature flag. It becomes user-facing. We're going to put it in the release post. It might make a little bit more sense and open up that conversation for both engineering, and either PD and or PM decides on like how much time we can involve there, or who's taking up the stick to push this forward and allow us to more efficiently kind of release the features that we do and make sure that they are the features we want to deploy as we thought they should be, right? Yeah. Coming back to my question, 3 minutes left after this, I got a research call. Planning breakdown happens, not too many actors, that is noted. So if I have an issue that has a workflow design label and I put planning breakdown label, does that mean automatically that those issues will end up on the like needs weight issue or not? Like how does that correlate.
Yeah, it's all manual, and to date, Orit has been the one orchestrating the needs weight issue. I think mostly. I think other people have. I think Nicole might have put some things in there, you know, for Angelo and some other things, but that's the process. Not that we have to stick to that, but that's just how it's been happening thus far.
Yeah, because without being on that issue, issues will not get weighted, or we don't have the conversation around like the planning breakdown discussion, right? Because that is what we need to happen.
Yes.
It will not happen for that milestone.
Sorry?
I just want to it won't, the planning breakdown and weighting won't happen for that milestone if it's not on the need weight issue. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, just it's not scheduled for that milestone based on priority. That's how we generally work with or read on that.
If it's not within the needs weight issue. Yeah, totally get that. I understand you need to scope like the effort involved in like the planning breakdown effort, right, for engineers. Yeah, and as I am starting to work more ahead and in Orit as well, as much as I can push that, some of that work will be included earlier and earlier, and I think we can align on that to have those issues way in advance, because that is what happens in, for example, looking at stage groups such as release management, package, where the planning breakdown discussion happens way in advance of the milestone it will eventually be developed in. And I think that is an ideal state we want to be in while remaining flexible from a product management perspective. Anyway, this helped me a lot. What my action point for this, and I want to make sure that you don't have any action points or don't feel obligated to. I'll bring this to Orit and discuss how I can more effectively bring planning breakdown into like the developer handoff process from design towards the build track, right? But this has been really informational. It clears up how progressive delivery is functioning, and I'm still feeling a little new towards the engineering processes, so I need to just dive into the handbook. But thanks for this. I really found it informative. So with that, I'm gonna go and close this. Any other remarks, comments? If so, please speak them up now. Otherwise, I will speak to you next time. Cheers. Thanks for your time.